What is your occupation, Miss Atkins?
I'm an housemaid.
Were you employed at Elm Court in that capacity on October the 7th of last year?
Yes, sir, I was.
Now, I'd like you to think back and answer this question. Did you on that date notice anything which you would deem out of the ordinary?
Yes, sir, I did.
Would you like to tell the court what that was?
Well, it happened while I was on in the evening. I was sorting out china in the kitchen when Mr. Beamish come in all breathless and said...
No, my lord.
Quite so, Mr. Harvester. Miss Atkins, I'm afraid you are not allowed to tell us what Mr. Beamish said.
Did he say something had happened?
Yes.
I don't think my learned friend will object to this. He asked you to lend Madam some clothes?
Yes, but he wouldn't say why.
Go on.
Well, we had a bit of an argument and I went upstairs. Mr. Beamish insisted on coming with me to check the clothes, to make sure they were quite suitable for Madam to wear, he said. He wouldn't take the first things I got out. Finally we, or I should say he, chose a blouse, a sweater, a pair of my slacks and some sandals. Her feet were much larger than mine. Then we went upstairs to Mr. Beamish's room. Well, you could have knocked me over with a feather duster when I found Madam in there, wearing one of those see-through things. Anyway, I gave her the clothes and she puts them on and floats off without even a word of thanks. A couple of minutes later, I heard her car drive off.
Did Mrs. Scard say anything?
Well, I said to her I was sorry because we were all hoping for a reconciliation. And she said, it's difficult to reconcile yourself to living with a beast.
Now, are you quite sure she said that?
Yes, sir.
During the period between the early hours of October the 6th and the evening of the 7th, while Mrs. Scard was still at Elm Court, did you notice anything or hear anything which would suggest to you that she was being ill-treated in any way?
Only the bruise on her face, and her lip was bleeding a bit.
One more question, Miss Atkins. Have your clothes been returned to you?
No, not yet. I wouldn't want to wear them now anyway.
Thank you.
A moment, Mr. Harvester, please. Miss Atkins, do you know who screwed up the windows in Mrs. Scard's bedroom?
Well, the only thing I can think of, Your Worship, is perhaps one of the burglar alarm men did it.
What burglar alarm men?
Well, at the time there was a lot of toing and froing about the burglar alarms, taking out the old system and putting a new one in. Several times they went before the job was finished.
So you mean during the changeover someone may have screwed up the windows as a precaution and then forgotten to unscrew them?
It's possible, yes, Your Worship.
I see, thank you.
Did you at any time since these burglar alarm men, as you call them, came to the house, observe any screws in any other windows?
No.
No. No, as I thought. Now, you say that you heard Mrs. Scard say it's difficult trying to reconcile yourself to living with a beast. You apparently are the only one who heard those words.
Well, Mr. Beamish couldn't, could he? He was standing outside in the passage, Madam being in her birthday suit and all.
Tell me, when you heard these words spoken, did you attach any particular importance to them?
No, why should I?
Well, then, how is it that after all this time you can remember them? Now, think carefully, Miss Atkins. You are on oath. Are you absolutely certain in your own mind that she spoke those actual words?
Yes, I am.
Well, you see, Miss Cutforth's evidence is that she said no such thing to you.
Well, I can't help that.
Miss Atkins, another thing you said, that Mr. Beamish, when he asked you first to lend your mistress some clothes, there was an argument. What was that argument about?
Well, no one likes to lend other people their clothes, do they?
Are you sure that's the only reason?
Of course I am.
It's true, isn't it, that you felt a dislike for Miss Cutforth as a person?
Yes.
A strong dislike.
Yes, it's
In
true.
fact, on many occasions, you even said that you could have made Mr. Scard a much better wife than she could. Isn't that right?
Anyone could have made him a better wife than she did.
And now that the marriage has broken down, someone will get that chance.
I have no re-examination, my lord.
Very well, Miss Atkins. You may go.
That concludes the case for the defence, my lord.
Very well. Mr. Harvester?
Members of the jury, one thing at least is clear in this case. Robert Scard, in the context of his marriage, revealed himself to be a brute. The separation, when it came in December of 1971, was hardly surprising. Indeed, what is surprising is that Miss Cutforth lived with that man for as long as she did. 10 months after the separation, Scard lured Miss Cutforth to his remote country house. There, he kept her under lock and key and induced her to have sexual intercourse with him twice, saying that she would not go free until she had done so. The law is that an apparent consent is not a real consent if it is given under duress. Miss Cutforth did not consent to sexual intercourse. She acquiesced under duress. That is rape. Scard says that she wasn't locked up, but her consent was given freely as part of some sordid bargain. He says, in effect, that Miss Cutforth prostituted herself. But, members of the jury, the evidence, which was undisputed, was that the windows had been screwed up and the wires operating the bells in the rooms had been cut. The truth is that Serena Cutforth went innocently to Elm Court on the night of the 5th and 6th of October and woke up the next morning to find herself in a cage. Oh, it was, by all accounts, a gilded cage, but the key was in the possession of a monster. Members of the jury, in my submission, the evidence in this case allows no doubts as to the guilt of the accused, and I ask you to return your verdict accordingly.
Members of the jury, this case turns almost exclusively on the question, who do you believe? Do you believe Miss Cutforth's story that she married for love, separated through incompatibility, was lured back to Elm Court on the pretext of a discussion of maintenance, and there induced to intercourse under the threat of being locked up until she did? Or do you believe Robert Scarve's story? He says he married Miss Cutforth as part of the bargain whereby he loaned money into her father's ailing private bank. Part of the bargain was that her father was not to know about it, and that the engagement was not to be announced until 6 months after the first payment of the loan. Now he sees that she never loved him, that she left him, as he subsequently learned, for another man, that they went to Elm Court to effect a reconciliation, that he never locked her up, and that sexual intercourse was consensual, induced not by force, but by gifts which she as good as demanded. Members of the jury, I submit that Robert Scard is neither a monster nor a beast, and that if someone has behaved badly, it is his wife, and I therefore ask you to return a verdict of not guilty.
Now, members of the jury, there are two issues in this case. First, was Miss Cutforth locked up in those rooms as she says she was? Because if she was, then the accused is guilty of unlawful imprisonment. Second, did the acts of sexual intercourse, which it is agreed occurred, take place because she was told that she would not go free until she had submitted to them? Now, rape of a woman is sexual intercourse under duress. Usually this duress is actual physical violence, but any kind of duress will do. In this case, physical violence is not suggested in connection with the sexual intercourse. But if you believe, you may think, Miss Cutforth's story, you may think that there was sufficient violence to amount to duress. I do not propose to go over the evidence or counsel's arguments, but I do ask you to remember that the prosecution must prove their case beyond all reasonable doubt. And now, members of the jury, will you please retire to consider your verdict?
All stand. All stand. Will the foreman please stand? Just answer this question, yes or no. Have you reached a verdict upon which you're all agreed?
Yes.
On the first count of unlawful imprisonment, do you find the accused guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
On the second count of rape, do you find the accused guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Next week, our cameras return to watch another leading case in the Crown Court.